Hey folks, this is immigration attorney Hassan Abdullah here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm preparing this video to discuss the topic of U visas. So basically, what a U visa is, as many of you may know, it is a visa application if you've been a victim for those who have been a victim of crime. And there's a specific list of crime which are qualified, which will qualify you to apply for a U visa. Um, Before U visa existed, there was a problem. People who were victims of crime may be afraid to come forward and speak as a witness to help the prosecution and help police investigate criminal activity because they themselves were afraid that they would be put into removal proceedings, that they might be referred to ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, for deportation and removal. So this law was passed to encourage those who may not have legal status in the United States to still speak out against criminal activity. It gives people in these situations additional rights. And even if you are in some legal status in the U.S., it may even be easier to get a U visa because you might not need a waiver. If you didn't enter the country illegally, you're not going to need a waiver. So it's even easier for those who are in the United States, victims of crime, and in actual legal status who enter the United States legally. I'll talk more about that later in this video. So what are the benefits of U visa status? Well, the main benefit, the biggest benefit, is that you can apply for a green card within 3 years of having U visa status, which is a great benefit. Another thing is you will be able to have work authorization. You get a work permit naturally by having a U visa status. You are permitted to work. And you can also have a sponsorship for your relatives. Certain relatives can also apply as derivative U visa beneficiaries. And again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as well in this video. Now, first, quickly, what are the factors that make you eligible for a U visa? First of all, you have to have suffered physical or mental abuse as a result of specific enumerated criminal activity. So you're going to have to demonstrate that somehow. This is not really the most essential or critical factor because it generally goes without saying that if you've been a victim of one of these enumerated crimes, you did experience some kind of physical or emotional abuse as a result of the criminal activity. But additional evidence will help the case. A declaration, letters from therapists, medical reports, things like that. Another thing is you have to show that you possess information about the crime, which often goes without saying. If you've been a victim of crime, obviously you possess information. And you have to show that you have been or you are likely to provide assistance in the prosecution, investigation of the crime. What satisfies that specific element mainly is going to be your U visa certification. You have to get certification from either a law enforcement agency, police department, or the district attorney, or other similar type of organizations. Another thing is the criminal activity has to have happened in the United States. So I've actually been asked about this by a potential client before. Can you apply for a U visa? You know, I was a victim. My spouse was a U.S. citizen, and he abused me in my home country, and he did this crime, that crime, domestic violence, who knows what, things like that. You can't get a U visa if that criminal activity only happened outside the United States, unfortunately. Another special factor of U visa is that, again, like I was mentioned before, you have to be a victim of a very specific type of crime. It's not any type of crime. So some of these crimes include domestic violence, trafficking, torture, certain types of felony assault, slavery, involuntary servitude. You've got kidnapping, abductions. There's a very detailed list. You can actually find that on the U visa instruction form. Actually, there's a list of all of these crimes, and it's in the regulations, of course. But what if you were a crime? What if you were a victim of a crime that was not on this list? it can still qualify for it. That can still qualify you for a U visa. There's a specific provision in the law which allows people who are victim of related criminal activity to apply for a U visa. And there's also a concept in criminal law of lesser included offenses. So you could argue that if you're a victim of robbery with a deadly weapon, a lesser included offense could be arguably felonious assault, which is on the U visa list. Interestingly enough, robbery is not on the U visa list of crimes. But if you were a victim of robbery, you can argue that you were a victim of felony assault in the course of that robbery. Not all robberies will count for a U visa, but it's a fact intensive issue. It's determined on a case by case basis. So that's just one example of how you can qualify for a U visa if you're a victim of what's called related criminal activity. Now another thing is, a question is, who can be a victim? It has to either be a direct victim, but you can well, it can either be a direct victim, and in some cases indirect victims can qualify for a U visa. So direct victim, obviously, it's what the name implies. You are directly impacted by the crime. You are a victim of that robbery or assault. An indirect victim, if your child was a victim and that child was a U.S. citizen, obviously the child does not need to apply for a U visa, but you might. And in that case, you can apply for a U visa as a direct victim, because you're a victim through your U.S. citizen child. Another example is where murder is actually one of the crimes on the U visa list. So if you're a spouse or your parent was a victim of murder, you may be able to apply for a U visa because you're considered a victim, an indirect victim. Of course, there's also the factor of derivatives. Derivatives can apply for U visa. So what are derivatives? Derivatives for adults, if you're an adult and you're a victim of a crime, your non-culpable spouse and your children under age 21 can apply for derivative status of U visa, which is basically like having a U visa, just like you'll have a U visa. So what I have to also mention is non-culpable spouse. Let's just say you're a victim, again, of domestic violence. Your spouse, who might be here without a legal status as well, can't get a U visa as a derivative because he or she may have been a perpetrator of the crime. The culpable spouse can't get the U visa as a derivative. Another thing is, if you're under 21, then your siblings can actually get derivative U status if they're under 18. Non-culpable parents can also get U visa. So again, if the parent was physically abusing you or harming you in some way, and that's the way you're getting your U visa, they can't get the U visa as a derivative. And again, if you're under 21, you might even be married, and your spouse can also qualify if it's a non-culpable spouse, just like how that situation works for those who are over 21. Now, another issue is the U visa certification, which can be a challenge sometimes. You have to be able to get to the right person in either the police department or the district attorney's office. And it's not always very obvious who you should go to. So having experience in getting the U visa certification can be very useful in avoiding a lot of, basically frustration and heading into a brick wall. There's certain contacts that you need to make at the district attorney's office or the police department to get the U visa. Another thing that I want to discuss, and I'm running out of time on this video unfortunately, is getting waivers. Generally, as a matter of policy, if you're inadmissible, meaning that you enter the United States illegally without inspection, you have to also apply for a waiver if you don't have a valid passport, or if you have certain criminal convictions that make you inadmissible, then you have to apply for a waiver. And generally, waivers are liberally granted if you basically explain the equities of being a victim and having the opportunity to apply for a visa because you've been helpful to law enforcement. So it's not this most simple topic, but it is definitely something where a good attorney can help you obtain this status, and it's a really beneficial tool for anyone who's been a victim of a crime. So I hope this video has been helpful. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.